The letter that changed everything. Autumn rain hammered against the windows of the Manhattan penthouse as James Mitchell stared at the envelope in his hands. No return address. No stamp. Just his name written in careful handwriting that somehow felt familiar yet distant. Inside, a single sentence had been written on expensive paper. Come back to Meadowbrook. You need to see what you abandoned. James read the words for the 10th time that evening, his scotch growing warm in his other hand. Meadowbrook. He had not heard that name spoken aloud in 7 years. The small Oregon town where he had met Rachel Thompson, where they had fallen in love, where they had planned a simple life together before his ambition tore them apart. He had been a different man then. Fresh out of business school, full of dreams about building an empire, Rachel had wanted something else entirely. A quiet life, farm, children running through fields of wildflowers. She had looked at him with those green eyes full of hope and asked him to choose. He had chosen the company, the money, the power, and he had never looked back. Until now, returned to Meadowbrook. The drive from Portland to Meadowbrook took 3 hours through winding country roads. James drove his rental car slowly, taking in the familiar landscape. Rolling hills covered in golden grass. Ancient oak trees lining the roadways. Wooden fences that had been there for generations. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. When he finally pulled up to the old farmhouse on Thornberry Road, his breath caught in his chest. The property looked different than he remembered. Better maintained. The white picket fence had been repaired and painted. New flower beds bordered the walkway. A tire swing hung from the massive oak tree in the front yard. Rachel had built the life she dreamed about. Without him, James stepped out of the car, his expensive Italian shoes sinking slightly into the soft earth. He felt suddenly out of place in his tailored suit and designer watch. A city man standing on country soil. That is when he saw her, face-to-face. Rachel was kneeling in the vegetable garden, her hands deep in the rich brown soil. She wore faded jeans and a simple cotton shirt, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked older, but somehow more beautiful. There was a strength in her posture that had not been there before, a quiet confidence. She glanced up and froze. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Rachel slowly stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. Her face showed no emotion, no anger, no joy, just careful neutrality. "Hello, Rachel," James said, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. "James." Her tone was flat, giving nothing away. "I did not think I would ever see you again. I got a letter. Someone sent me a message saying I needed to come back." Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. "I did not send any letter." "I know. I figured that out." James took a step closer to the fence. "But I came anyway. I needed to see you." "Why?" The single word carried the weight of 7 years of silence. "Because I made a mistake. Because I have thought about you every single day since I left. Because I was a fool." Rachel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You were always good with words, James. That was part of the problem. You could talk about anything except what really mattered." Before James could respond, he heard it. A child's laughter coming from inside the house. Light and carefree. It drifted through an open, window-like music. His head turned instinctively toward the sound. The girl in the window, she appeared at the upstairs window so suddenly that James almost thought he imagined her. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, with copper-colored hair and pale skin. But it was her eyes that made James forget to breathe. Gray eyes, the exact same shade as his own. The child stared down at him with open curiosity. Her small hands pressed against the glass. She tilted her head to one side, studying him the way children do when they encounter something new and interesting. Rachel's voice was sharp. "Come away from the window, sweetheart." The girl disappeared, but not before James saw her smile. A shy, wondering smile that pierced something deep in his chest. "Who is she?" James asked, though he already knew the answer. He could feel it in his bones. Rachel's face had gone pale. Her jaw tightened, and she crossed her arms defensively. "That is none of your business. Rachel, please." Just tell me. I do not owe you any explanations, James. You gave up that right when you walked away 7 years ago. Is she mine? The question came out as barely a whisper. Rachel took 3 steps toward him, her eyes blazing now with all the emotion she had been holding back. You do not get to show up here after all this time and start asking questions. You do not get to disrupt our lives because you suddenly decided you made a mistake. I just need to know the truth. The truth. Rachel's voice rose. The truth is that you chose your career over me and over us. The truth is that you were not there when I needed you most. The truth is that I built this life without you, and we are doing just fine. But that girl Olivia is my daughter. That is all you need to know. The words hit James like a physical blow. My daughter, not our daughter. Rachel was drawing a line, making it clear that he had no claim here. A place to stay, James stood there in the fading afternoon light, feeling more lost than he had in years. In Manhattan, he controlled boardrooms. He closed million-dollar deals. He made decisions that affected thousands of employees. But here, standing in front of this farmhouse, facing the woman he had once loved, he had no power at all. I am staying in town for a few days, he finally said, at the Meadowbrook Inn. Why? What do you want from me? I want to understand what happened. I want to know about the past 7 years. He paused, struggling to find the right words. I want a chance to make things right. Rachel shook her head slowly. Some things cannot be fixed, James. Some choices are permanent. Maybe, but I have to try. She looked at him for a long moment, and he thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the smallest crack in her armor. Go to your inn, she said quietly, and stay away from my daughter. James nodded, knowing he had pushed as far as he could for one day. He turned back toward his car, but before he reached it, he looked back one more time. Olivia was at the window again, watching him. When their eyes met, she waved. A small, tentative gesture that made his heart ache. He waved back, and then she was gone. Pieces of a puzzle, the Meadowbrook Inn, was exactly as James remembered it. A 2-story building with a wraparound porch and rooms that smelled faintly of lavender. Mrs. Patterson. The owner recognized him immediately. James Mitchell. My goodness, it has been years. Hello, Mrs. Patterson. I need a room for a few nights. Of course. She handed him a key, her eyes bright with curiosity. What brings you back to our little town? Just visiting, he said noncommittally. But Mrs. Patterson was not fooled. Small towns had their own intelligence networks, faster and more efficient than any corporate spy system. See. Well, Rachel Thompson has done wonderfully with that farm. And little Olivia is just the sweetest child you ever did see. Olivia, James repeated the name carefully. How old is she? Just turned 6 last month. Rachel threw her a lovely birthday party. Half the town came. 6 years old? The timeline matched perfectly. That night, James lay awake in the small room, staring at the ceiling. Olivia's face kept appearing in his mind. Those gray eyes that mirrored his own. The way she had watched him with such innocent curiosity. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant in New York. Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. Quietly. Of course, Mr. Mitchell, what do you need? I need information about a woman named Rachel Thompson. Specifically, I need to know if she had a baby 7 years ago. Hospital records, birth certificates, anything you can find. There was a pause on the other end. Sir, that is a rather personal request. I know, but it is important. More important than anything else right now. I will see what I can do. James hung up and walked to the window. Somewhere out there in the darkness was Rachel's farm. Somewhere in that house was a little girl who might be his daughter. And somewhere in this tangled mess was the truth he had been running from for 7 years. Tomorrow, we'd start looking for answers. Tomorrow. He would begin to understand what he had really lost when he drove away from Meadowbrook all those years ago. But tonight, all he could do was stare into the darkness and wonder how his life had become so complicated. The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and fresh. Through the window, James could see stars beginning to appear in the clearing sky. In New York, you could never see the stars. Too many lights. Too much noise. Too much of everything except what really mattered. He thought about Rachel kneeling in her garden, her hands in the soil, building something real and lasting. He thought about Olivia's wave from the window, and he thought about the choice he had made 7 years ago that had led him to this moment. Some choices are permanent, Rachel had said, but James was not ready to accept that. Not yet. He had built an empire in New York. But standing here in this small room in Meadowbrook, he realized he had built it on sand. Everything that truly mattered was right here in this forgotten corner of Oregon, and he was not leaving until he understood exactly what that meant. Morning at the farm, the morning sun painted Meadowbrook in shades of gold and amber. James woke early, unable to sleep past dawn. The quiet of the small town was unsettling after years of Manhattan's constant noise. Here he could hear birds singing, the distant sound of a rooster crowing, the gentle rustle of wind through trees. He dressed in the most casual clothes he had brought. Jeans and a simple button-down shirt, though even these looked too expensive for farm work. After a quick breakfast at the inn, he found himself driving back toward Thornberry Road. He told himself he was just going for a drive, just getting reacquainted with the area. But his car seemed to know where it wanted to go. When he arrived at Rachel's farm, she was already outside, loading bags of feed into a wheelbarrow. She looked up as his car approached, and her expression hardened. "I thought I told you to stay away," she called out. James got out of the car, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I know, but I could not stop thinking about what you said, about how I was not there when you needed me. I want to understand what happened. Understanding will not change anything." "Maybe not, but I need to know anyway." He paused. "Please, Rachel, give me one conversation. Just one honest conversation about the past." She studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Fine, but not here. Olivia will be up soon, and I do not want her confused." "Where then?" "There is a creek about half a mile down the road. The old willow tree. You remember?" James nodded. It was where they used to meet when they were young and in love, where they had carved their initials into the bark and talked about their dreams until the stars came out. "I will meet you there in 20 minutes, Rachel said. "I need to make sure Olivia is settled with breakfast first." By the willow tree, the creek looked exactly as James remembered. The water moved slowly over smooth stones, creating a gentle music. The willow tree had grown larger, its branches now touching the ground like a natural curtain. Rachel arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to James without a word and sat down on the grassy bank. He sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. For several minutes, neither spoke. They just listened to the creek and watched the water flow past. Finally, Rachel broke the silence. "When you left, I was 8 weeks pregnant. I did not know it yet." James felt his heart clench. 8 weeks. "I found out 2 weeks after you drove away. I was so sick every morning. I thought I had the flu. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, finally convinced me to see a doctor." Rachel's voice was steady, but James could hear the pain underneath. "The doctor told me I was carrying twins." "Twins," James whispered. "A boy and a girl." I was terrified. I was alone. I had no money saved up. But I was also happy, because even though you were gone, I would have a part of you with me always." She took a sip of her coffee. "I tried to reach you. I sent letters to your office in New York. I called the company switchboard dozens of times. Do you know what they told me?" James closed his eyes. "That I was not available. They said Mr. Mitchell could not be disturbed. They said to leave a message, and someone would get back to me. No one ever did." Rachel's voice hardened. "Your family's lawyer sent me a letter. Do you know what it said?" "I can imagine. It said that any further attempts to contact you would be considered harassment. It said that if I persisted, they would take legal action. It was signed by some law firm I had never heard of, but the message was clear. Stay away from James Mitchell and his new life." James felt sick. His father had done this. His controlling, manipulative father who had always disapproved of Rachel, who had called her a distraction, who had said that a woman from a farming town would ruin James's potential. I did not know, James said quietly. I swear to you, Rachel. I never saw those letters. I never got your messages. My father controlled everything in those first years. He monitored my calls, screened my mail, managed my schedule. He said it was to help me focus on building the company. So you had no idea I was pregnant? None. If I had known, I would have come back. I would have. He stopped. Not sure what he would have done. Would he really have given up everything to come back to Meadowbrook? Rachel seemed to read his thoughts. Would you have, though? Really? Because from where I was standing, you had already made your choice. The painful truth, the pregnancy was difficult, Rachel continued. I had to stay in bed for most of it. Mrs. Chen moved in to help me. She cooked, cleaned, helped me run the farm. Without her, I would have lost everything. She paused, staring at the water. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I went into labor at 36 weeks. It was the middle of the night. Mrs. Chen drove me to the hospital in Greenfield. The labor lasted 14 hours. Rachel's hands were shaking now. The girl came first. Olivia. She was so small, but she was breathing. She was alive. She had your eyes. Tears were streaming down Rachel's face, but she kept talking. But the boy. My son. Her voice broke. He was not breathing. The cord was wrapped around his neck. They tried everything. The doctors worked on him for 30 minutes, but he never took a breath. Never opened his eyes. Never cried. James felt something crack open inside his chest. Rachel, I am so sorry. His name was Thomas. I named him after my grandfather. I held him for 2 hours before they took him away. I held both of my babies, one living and one gone, and I had never felt so alone in my entire life. She turned to look at James, her eyes red and swollen. That is what you missed. That is what you were not there for. I buried my son alone. I brought my daughter home alone. I learned how to be a mother alone. And every single day, I had to be strong for Olivia while my heart was breaking for Thomas. James reached out to touch her hand, but she pulled away. Do not, she said sharply. Do not try to comfort me now. You do not get to show up 7 years later and act like you care. But I do care. More than you know. Caring is not enough, James. It never was. An unexpected visitor. They sat in painful silence for several more minutes. Finally, Rachel stood up, brushing grass from her jeans. I need to get back. Olivia will be wondering where I am. Can I meet her? Properly, I mean. Rachel hesitated. I do not think that is a good idea. She's my daughter, Rachel. Biology does not make you a father. Being there does. And you were not there. Before James could respond, his phone buzzed. It was Jennifer, his assistant. Mr. Mitchell, we have a serious problem. What kind of problem? Gregory Dalton has called an emergency board meeting. He is making a move to remove you as CEO. He claims you have abandoned your responsibilities and are unfit to lead the company. James felt his blood run cold. Gregory Dalton was his business partner, or at least he had been. They had built the company together, but their relationship had become strained over the past year. Gregory wanted to take the company in a more aggressive direction, cutting costs and maximizing profits. James had been pushing for more sustainable practices. When is the meeting? Tomorrow afternoon? If you are not there, the board might vote you out. James looked at Rachel, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. Tell them I will be there, he said. Understood. I will arrange for the jet to pick you up this afternoon. James hung up and turned to Rachel. I have to go back to New York, just for a day or two. There is a situation at the company. Rachel's laugh was bitter. Of course there is. There is always something more important. Is not there? This is different. My business partner is trying to take over the company. If I do not fight back, I could lose everything I have worked for. Then go, Rachel said coldly. Go back to your empire. We will be fine here, just like we have been for the past 7 years. Rachel, please understand. I understand perfectly. Nothing has changed. You are still the same person who chose money over family. Still the same person who will always put business first. She started walking away. Goodbye, James. Have a nice life. I'm coming back, he called after her. I promise you, I am coming back. She did not turn around, did not acknowledge his words, just kept walking until she disappeared around a bend in the path. James stood alone by the willow tree, feeling like he was losing everything all over again. A choice to make, the private jet was waiting at the small regional airport. James boarded with a heavy heart, his mind racing with everything Rachel had told him. Twins. He had lost a son he never knew existed. He had a daughter who did not know he was her father. Rachel had suffered through all of that alone, while he was in New York building a company that suddenly seemed meaningless. During the flight, James tried to prepare for the board meeting. He reviewed documents, made notes, planned a strategy, but his heart was not in it. Jennifer met him at the airport with a briefcase full of papers. Mr. Mitchell, I have everything you need for tomorrow. Gregory has been spreading rumors that you have been distracted and making poor decisions. Several board members are wavering. What about our allies? You still have support, but it is not guaranteed. You need to show strength tomorrow.
Oh.
You need to prove that you are committed to the company. James nodded, but his thoughts were far away in Oregon. That night, in his Manhattan penthouse, he stood at the window looking out at the glittering cityscape. This had been his dream once. The penthouse, the company, the power and prestige. But what did it all mean if he had no one to share it with? His phone rang. It was an unknown number with an Oregon area code. Hello, Mr. Mitchell? It was a child's voice, small and nervous. Yes. Who is this? This is Olivia, Rachel's daughter. I found your number in my mom's phone. James's heart started pounding. Olivia, hi? Does your mom know you were calling? No, she is asleep, but I wanted to talk to you. Why? Because you looked sad when you left, and because my mom cried after you went away. She does not cry very much, so I know it was important. James sat down, his legs suddenly weak. Olivia, I am sorry if I upset your mom. Are you the man from the fancy car who never came back? The question hit James like a punch. What do you mean? Mom told me once that she loved a man who drove away in a fancy car and never came back. She said sometimes people choose things instead of people. Is that you? Yes, James whispered. That was me. Why did you choose things instead of people? How could he explain this to a 6-year-old? How could he explain something he did not fully understand himself? I thought that things mattered more, but I was wrong. That is okay. People make mistakes. Mom says the important thing is to try to fix them. Your mom is very smart, I know. She is the best mom in the whole world. Olivia paused. Mr. Mitchell, are you my daddy? James felt tears running down his face. Yes, Olivia, I am. I thought so. I have your eyes. Everyone says so. Another pause. Are you going to stay away again? Oh, I promise I am not. Good, because we have a farm and there is a lot of work to do. Mom tries to do everything herself, but it is hard. She gets tired. I am going to help. I am going to come back and help with everything, when very soon. I just have to take care of something here first. Okay, good night, Mr. Mitchell. Good night, Olivia. And Olivia? Yes, thank you for calling me. After she hung up, James sat in the darkness of his penthouse for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Jennifer. Jennifer, I need you to draft a letter of resignation, sir. From what? From the company? From the CEO position? From everything? Mr. Mitchell, are you sure? The board meeting is tomorrow. You can still fight this? I am sure. I spent 7 years building something that does not matter. It's time to build something that does. The corporate battle, despite his decision, James still attended the board meeting. He owed the company that much, at least. The conference room was filled with grim faces. Gregory Dalton sat at the head of the table, looking confident and smug. James, glad you could make it, Gregory said with false warmth. We were beginning to think you had abandoned us. I am here, Gregory. Let us get this over with. For the next 2 hours, James listened as Gregory made his case. That James was distracted. That his recent decisions had cost the company money. that his focus was elsewhere, and honestly, Gregory was right about all of it. When it was James's turn to speak, he stood up and looked around the table at the men and women who had helped him build this empire. 7 years ago, I started this company with a singular focus. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be wealthy. I wanted to prove that I could build something significant. He paused, and I succeeded. We all succeeded. This company is worth billions. We employ thousands of people. We have built something remarkable. The board members nodded, looking pleased. But I built it at a cost. I gave up the woman I loved. I missed the birth of my daughter. I was not there when I was needed most. And for what? For numbers on a balance sheet? For a bigger office? For my name on a building? Gregory frowned. James, what are you saying? I am saying that Gregory is right. My heart is not in this anymore. My focus is elsewhere. And instead of fighting to keep something I no longer want, I am going to do something I should have done 7 years ago. He pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. This is my formal resignation as CEO. Gregory, you can have the position. You can run the company however you see fit. I am done. The room erupted in shocked voices. Gregor looked stunned. Jennifer, standing by the door, was shaking her head in disbelief. You are making a mistake, Gregory said. You are walking away from billions of dollars. No, James said calmly. 7 years ago, I walked away from what really mattered. Today, I am walking toward it. He turned and left the boardroom, feeling lighter than he had in years. Racing back, James drove straight from the office to the airport. He chartered a helicopter because it was faster than waiting for the jet to be prepared. During the flight, he made plans. He would sell his shares in the company. He would liquidate his assets. He would move to Meadowbrook. He would learn how to run a farm. He would be a father to Olivia. He would prove to Rachel that he had changed. It was late evening when the helicopter landed in the field near Rachel's farm. The noise of the rotors brought her running from the house, her face alarmed. James, what is happening? But is everything okay? He jumped down from the helicopter and walked toward her, a huge smile on his face. Everything is perfect. Better than perfect. What are you talking about? What about your meeting? I quit. Rachel's eyes went wide. You what? I resigned. I walked away from the company. From everything. He took her hands in his. I am not going back to New York, Rachel. I am staying here, if you will let me. James, you cannot be serious. That company is your entire life. No, it was my entire mistake. My life is here, with you and Olivia, if you will give me a chance to prove it. Tears were forming in Rachel's eyes. You really quit? I really quit. Why? Because Olivia called me last night. She asked me if I was going to stay away again. I realized that I had been making the same choice over and over for 7 years. Choosing the wrong thing every single time. He stepped closer. I do not want to be that person anymore. I want to be the person who stays, the person who helps with the farm, the person who is there when his daughter needs him, the person who deserves you. Rachel was crying openly now. James, I do not know if I can trust you. You have hurt me so badly. I know. I will spend every day proving that I have changed. I will work on this farm. I will learn everything I need to learn. I will be patient. I will earn your trust back one day at a time. Learning to stay the first week was harder than James had imagined. Running a farm was nothing like running a corporation. There were no board meetings or conference calls. Instead, there were chickens to feed, fences to mend, vegetables to harvest. James moved into the small guest house on Rachel's property. Every morning he woke before dawn and worked alongside Rachel until the sun set. Once smooth from pushing papers, developed calluses. Expensive clothes got covered in mud and dirt. His back ached from physical labor, but he had never been happier. Olivia warmed to him quickly. She showed him how to collect eggs from the hen house without scaring the chickens. She taught him which vegetables were ready to harvest and which needed more time. She held his hand as they walked through the fields, chattering about everything and nothing. One evening, while they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia climbed into his lap. Daddy, she said, testing out the word. James felt his throat tighten. Yes, sweetheart, I am glad you came back. Me too, Olivia. Me too. Rachel watched from the doorway, her expression soft. She was beginning to believe. beginning to trust, beginning to let her walls down. But just as things were starting to feel right, trouble arrived. The developer returns his name was Benson Graves, and he arrived in a sleek black sedan that looked completely out of place on the dirt roads of Meadowbrook. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. Rachel was in the barn when he approached. James was with her, helping to repair a broken stall door. Miss Thompson, my name is Benson Graves. I represent Horizon Development Corporation. We are very interested in purchasing your property. Rachel barely looked up. Not interested. I think you will be when you hear our offer. We are prepared to pay 3 times the market value for this land. Still not interested. Benson smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Miss Thompson, I should mention that we have already purchased the 3 surrounding properties. Your farm is the final piece we need for our development project. It would be in your best interest to accept our offer. And I said no. Rachel's voice was firm. This farm has been in my family for 3 generations. It is not for sale. Everything is for sale at the right price. James stepped forward. The lady said no. I think it is time for you to leave. Benson looked James up and down, taking in the dirt-covered jeans and work boots. And you are? Someone telling you to leave. Benson's smile turned cold. I see. Well, Mr. Thompson, you should know that Horizon Development has ways of getting what we want. We can make life very difficult for people who do not cooperate. Are you threatening us? Rachel asked, her eyes flashing with anger. I am simply stating facts. Good day, Miss Thompson. I will be in touch. After Benson drove away, Rachel turned to James, her face pale. This is not the first time they have approached me. They have been pressuring me for months. Why did not you tell me? Because I did not want to worry you, and because I can fight my own battles. James took her hands. You do not have to fight alone anymore. We are a team now. The investigation that night. James called Jennifer in New York. Despite his resignation, they had remained friends. I need you to research a company called Horizon Development Corporation. Find out who owns it, who runs it, everything. I will get right on it, sir. 2 days later, Jennifer called back with information that made James's blood run cold. Mr. Mitchell, Horizon Development is a subsidiary of Dalton Enterprises. Gregory's company? Yes, sir. And there is more. It appears that Gregory has been targeting properties in rural Oregon for the past year. He is building a massive resort complex. He has already acquired most of the land he needs, but Rachel's farm is right in the center of his planned development. James felt rage building inside him. So this was never about the board meeting or the company. This was about Rachel's farm. It appears that way. Gregory must have found out about your connection to Miss Thompson. By forcing you out of the CEO position, he weakened your ability to interfere with his plans. That sneaky James stopped himself. Thank you, Jennifer. I owe you one. Just take care of yourself, sir. And that family of yours. James hung up and immediately went to find Rachel. She was in the kitchen making dinner while Olivia did homework at the table. You need to talk, James said. Gregory Dalton, my former business partner, is behind the development company. He is targeting your farm specifically. Rachel went pale. Why would he do that? Because he knows that you matter to me. He is using your farm as leverage. If he forces you to sell, he thinks I will come back to New York and give him what he wants. What does he want? Control of my shares in the company? Full ownership. Everything. Olivia looked up from her homework, her face worried. Are we going to lose the farm, Daddy? The word Daddy still made James's heart swell. No, sweetheart. We are not going to lose anything. I promise. The plan over the next week, James worked tirelessly on a plan. He called in every favor he had. He reached out to environmental groups, historical societies, and community organizations. Rachel's farm, it turned out, was home to a rare species of butterfly that was protected under federal law. The old oak tree in the front yard was over 200 years old and qualified for historical preservation. The creek that ran through the property was a protected watershed. James compiled all of this information and presented it to the county planning board. He argued that any development on this land would be illegal and environmentally devastating. Meanwhile, he hired a team of lawyers to investigate Gregory's business practices. They discovered that Horizon Development had used intimidation, tactics, and questionable legal methods to acquire the other properties. Several former landowners came forward with complaints, but Gregory was not going to give up easily. The final confrontation one morning, James woke to find construction equipment at the edge of Rachel's property. Bulldozers, excavators, and workers in hard hats. He ran outside to find Benson Graves directing the crew. "What do you think you are doing?" James demanded. "We are beginning preliminary work. Miss Thompson's continued refusal to sell does not change the fact that this land has been earmarked for development. You cannot just start building on someone else's property." Benson pulled out a document. "Actually, we can. There was an old easement on this land from the 1950s that allows for commercial development. It was never properly removed from the deed." James felt panic rising. "That is ridiculous. This is someone's home. Not for much longer." Rachel came running from the house, Olivia close behind her. When Olivia saw the bulldozers, she started crying. "Daddy, make them go away." James picked up his daughter, holding her close. He looked at Rachel's stricken face. At the farm that she had worked so hard to maintain, at the life they were building together, and he made a decision. He pulled out his phone and called Gregory directly. "What do you want, James?" Gregory answered coldly. "You want my shares in the company? Fine, you can have them." "What?" "I will sell you my shares for $1. I will sign over everything. The company, the assets, all of it. But you leave this farm alone. You cancel the development project. You pull your equipment out right now?" There was silence on the other end. Then Gregory laughed. "You are seriously offering me everything just to save this little farm?" "Yes. Why? It is not worth anything compared to what you are giving up. To you, maybe, but to me, it is worth everything." Gregory was quiet for a moment. "All right, James, you have a deal. Send me the paperwork. I will call off the construction." Within an hour, the bulldozers were gone. Benson Graves left without another word. The farm was safe, but James had given up his entire fortune to save it. The new beginning. Rachel found James sitting under the old oak tree, staring at nothing. "Jennifer just called me," Rachel said quietly. "She told me what you did. I did what I had to do. James, you gave up billions of dollars. Your entire life's work. For us." He looked up at her, his eyes clear and peaceful. "My life's work was not a company, Rachel. It was supposed to be this. A family. A home. A life that matters." Rachel sat down beside him, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot believe you did that. I would do it again in a heartbeat." She took his hand. "I love you, James Mitchell. I never stopped loving you, even when I hated you. I love you too. I always have." They kissed under the oak tree. 7 years of pain and regret melting away in that moment. 6 months later, the farm was thriving. With James's help, Rachel had expanded the operation. They sold organic vegetables at the farmers market. They hosted school groups for educational tours. They built a small bed and breakfast in the guest house. James learned how to drive a tractor. He became an expert at fixing fences. He could tell the difference between 18 different types of tomatoes. Olivia started first grade and told everyone that her daddy was the best farmer in the whole world. One evening, Rachel found an old wooden box buried under the floorboards in the barn. Inside were letters. Dozens of letters that Rachel had written to James 7 years ago, trying to tell him about the pregnancy. The letters had never been mailed. She had written them, but never had the courage to send them. Fearing they would be returned like all the others, James read every single letter. Tears streaming down his face as he learned about the months of pregnancy he had missed, the fear Rachel had felt, the joy and sorrow of the twins' birth. "I am so sorry I was not there," he whispered. "You are here now," Rachel said. "That is what matters." The proposal on a warm spring evening, James took Rachel to the willow tree by the creek, the same place where they had first fallen in love. The same place where she had told him the truth about Olivia and Thomas. "Rachel Thompson," he said, getting down on one knee. "I wasted 7 years of our lives. I let fear and ambition steal what should have been ours. I cannot get those years back, but I can promise you every year going forward." He pulled out a simple gold ring. Not a huge diamond, not an expensive designer piece. Just a plain gold band that he had made himself with the help of the local jeweler. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost?" Rachel was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, James. Yes, I will marry you." From behind a tree, Olivia jumped out, cheering. "Yes, now I can have a real family." They all laughed and hugged, standing together by the creek as the sun set over the hills of Meadowbrook. The wedding was small and simple. They got married under the old oak tree in the front yard. The entire town attended. Mrs. Chen, who had helped Rachel through the pregnancy, cried happy tears. Mrs. Patterson from the inn made the cake. Even Jennifer flew in from New York. Olivia was the flower girl, wearing a dress that Rachel had made herself. She scattered rose petals down the aisle with serious concentration, determined to do her job perfectly. When James and Rachel exchanged vows, they spoke about second chances and new beginnings, about learning from mistakes and choosing love over everything else. "I promise to wake up early and feed the chickens," James said, making everyone laugh. "I promise to be patient when you forget which vegetables are which," Rachel added,